Early, I guess 6 years ago, I moved home to Cape Breton, which not a lot of people do. Cape Breton has the highest unemployment in Canada and the highest rates of youth out migration. So being a young person moving back, I had this distinct sort of feeling where I was looking at the people around me, friends and friends of friends, who never had a chance to leave the island and didn't really have a chance of mobility, and was sort of thinking about what life is like for those individuals. And so that in a broad way, I guess that was something that I wanted to make a film about, but specifically around that time, well actually earlier than that, my producer and I were in our hometown, and we saw a young couple just walking down our street pushing a lawnmower and go to my neighbor's house, and the guy went to the front door and the girl went to the side door, and both knocked at the same time, and then like walked in, and there was an altercation, and it just was sort of out of the ordinary. We wanted to know who this couple was, and our process was sort of anti-rehearsal. Like, we filmed everything like on set, and a lot of the film was maybe would be shooting a scene, and we started developing these, I guess, documentary style techniques. We'd be shooting a scene, and then maybe someone would walk by outside a frame, but it would be interesting. So while the scene was running, I would maybe go up to that person and be like, "Can you enter the scene and do this?" And we just have started to develop these weird, but I don't know, I think it worked, ways of being in live environments. And I sort of stopped calling cut, and would let the camera run like 20 minutes, 45 minutes sometimes, and I would let a scene develop post the scripted scene, and a lot of the film ended up being made up of those moments because they just ended up being more interesting. And then as something was developing, just whispering things.
Over in Mabu. So watching this, I've seen many people go through the experience of addiction at home. Very real film, and really captured the essence of, like, I think the agony and the struggle that happens in Cape Breton with the addiction. There's very few resources, even if you're living in the more rural side of, let's say, the west side, trying to get to Sydney, etc. It's very challenging. So as far as like support from the film industry in Cape Breton, did you feel highly supported and like there's a future to keep making films in there? Or there?
That's cool, you're from Cape Breton. Thanks for coming out. Yeah, there's, I don't know if there was ever really a film industry in Cape Breton. There was, like, in the early 90s, they shot a TV show there, Pit Pony, that Ellen Page was in, and they had a bit of infrastructure, just briefly at the time, like a soundstage, but then once the show left, everything else left. So there's not an industry. And when I was making Werewolf, even, there was, my producer at the time was living in Halifax, so it was really just kind of me and one other filmmaker friend of mine, and we had sort of lost touch a bit, so I sort of felt very isolated.
Yeah.
As far as the traditional film community is concerned, or industry, I would say more, it's like a community, or an artist community. Yeah, there wasn't much of a film scene, but there's a little bit more, a little bigger one now, 3 or 4 people. But I think the cool thing about shooting outside of industry centers is that it's sort of a novelty. People aren't, I think if you try to get a location in a big city, they're like going to make you pay a lot of money because there's so much demand for that sort of stuff, and people are frustrated with film crews coming in because these bigger crews have this industrialized model that is very imposing. And for us, we would be shooting and people are just really curious, what are you doing? And it starts conversations, and we're talking, and then we're like, oh, do you want to try being in a scene? And it ends up being this collaborative process that was really beautiful, and we discovered so much talent everywhere we went, and just that really enriched the film, and people that we wouldn't have been able to cast any other way except that we happened to be shooting next door to where they lived, and that sort of thing. And so I think the community is very supportive, even though they're not involved in film. Everyone was on board and really generous, and it was like, yeah. that was rewarding.
Yeah, that sounds like very Cape Breton. Yep.
We had a lot of footage, like over 100 hours of footage for an 80-minute movie. But then because I'm editing, I'm always just pulling stuff away, pulling lines away, shortening scenes and cutting out a ton of scenes. And
The title?
sorry, I laughed. Normally we can't. There was like one Q&A where someone didn't ask that in Toronto, and we were like, me and my producer, we were all walking outside the theater. We're like, whoa, nobody asked about the title, and we like walked out the front door, and then someone came up to us and was like, I just didn't get to ask this during the film, but what does the title mean? So now, it's a great question, but now I'm just always laugh because I think of that moment. So yeah, do you want me to speak to the meaning of the title?
Well, take different levels.
Mm-hmm.
An idea, which I will say.
Yeah, no, why not? I'm interested in, I try not to, I don't want to like prescribe too much, because I find that I'm always really excited to hear what other people read into the title, and I think there's room for interpretation. And
well, there's something
curious
about the look of this guy, first of all, his natural look, beard, the teeth.
nails.
So, yeah, there's that. Also, well, when you think of werewolves, you think of what? Somebody who's very ordinary, and then something happens and boom. So, what could be that? But you may have another.
No, I love everything you just said. Yeah, that's.
Why not vampire?
I feel like that would have been appropriate too. Vampire was something that, yeah, I think during the making of the film had come up in my life in a few different ways. It was definitely like, but the film actually wasn't originally called Werewolf. It had a different title, and it was in the edit because the film just evolved so much and changed so much during the making. You know, at a certain point, the film finds its own logic and it starts like telling you things, and so things sort of turned around, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, now I have all this material, and like, what is it? What is the film now, and what is it telling us? And so we're trying to like read it and listen, and in that process, Werewolf came up. My producer walked in my edit suite one day and just said Werewolf, and I just turned around and was just like, yes. To me, it just like really connected with me on certain personal levels, but then I could also see how it just made sense, I think, on other levels, which is what I think what you just spoke to feels really appropriate to me, and I've heard other people say different things that also I think are really relevant, so I like to not be too reductive in my own connection to it, because it's usually not as interesting as what other people say.
Well, thank you all for coming, and thank Ashley. She came all the way from Cape Breton this morning.
Thank you.